in the heart of Cambridgeshire. This is Salam Radio.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اقتربت الساعة وانشق.
Assalamu alaikum. Good evening. You're listening to Islam Radio on 106.2 FM. I'm your host Shaz Nawaz, and I have in the studio with me
somebody else. Kieron and
well, you are somebody else.
I am indeed. Factually, that was true.
You were. You're always factually correct. No, I say always. Sometimes, usually, more often than not.
I'm normally factually correct. Whether I'm morally correct is a different matter entirely.
Sometimes.
I like to think of myself as being ambiguous and morally flexible. No, that's not true at all.
Yeah. You're a bad influence.
I've been told that before.
I know. Nothing new.
Nothing new there. Tell me something I don't know, Shaz.
Well, we're going to talk about the origins of money and some of that stuff you might not know about, or it might be new to you, or with a different angle. But before we do that, as always, we would welcome your participation, questions, comments, observations. And if you want to do so, you can call us on 01733 602 133, or you can text us on 07411 191 062, or you can comment on any of the live streams, which are Facebook, YouTube, X, or Twitch. So there are plenty of ways to get in contact. And the Maghrib Azan will take place at 18:07. So we'll have a quick pause for the Azan, as we usually do when it's on our show. And then we will reconvene.
So what you're saying is we'll start in earnest about 10 past.
Pretty much.
So we can get properly deep into this.
Well, we can introduce the topic, because this week on Wealth Made Simple, we are going to talk about the origins of money. And I think this topic is really important, Kieron. Just like any other topic that is of interest to somebody within their own area of expertise, or something that they want to learn. Because very often what I find is somebody's interested in a particular thing, topic, subject area, yet they don't know the history of it. And I find that odd. Maybe I'm odd, but I think, you're... I
mean, a little bit.
Yeah, but I mean, let me give you an example. Somebody joins a political party, for example. You say, well, who started the party? Oh, don't know. When did it start? Okay, what was the early movement about?
Why was it started?
Why was it started? So on and so forth. And to understand, the key things that the parties achieved, the key figures, how the parties changed, that type of stuff. I think that's important. Let's talk about business. Somebody wants to learn to be a copywriter, for example.
Yep.
As you know, that's an area of interest for me. I think you go back and see when copywriting really started, and when it came into its own, and who were the great copywriters and what stuff they've written, the headlines, the ads, the body, the offers, all that type of stuff, and look at different things being sold through copy. Understand how the thing, and I use that word loosely, came into being. Same for me in the world of accountancy and anything else, by the way. I think study the history, because there's so many lessons, and those things are universal to some extent, as you can transfer them to other areas of your life. But what was true, let's say 100 years ago, is true now in principle. The medium may change, okay, but the principle is the same. The way it's delivered or seen might be different. That's what I've experienced on the things I've looked at in terms of studying the history. And that's why I think the origins of money is important, because people are looking to attract wealth, because our obviously program is all about wealth made simple. Should understand money, and then we're obviously going to go into detail before you come in terms of using money, okay, as a means, as opposed to keeping it there because you think it's going to run out, or you don't spend it or invest it, because obviously we're all about invest and accumulate and then spend wisely, share, distribute as you see fit according to your own values.
Yeah, I couldn't have said any of that better myself. It did.
Well, that makes a change, doesn't it?
I know. It did remind me of my dissertation that I did on the history of theatre. and where that all originated from in conjunction with this. And like you say, the principles that started it are still applicable to actors, technicians, you know, soundscapes, all the rest of it. They're still almost exactly applicable. The only thing that's changed is the technology. The principles are still identical. You know, you look back, you know, the origin of theatre is potentially ritualistic.
Yeah.
People performing to elicit the skies to pour rain.
Yeah.
It's a performance. Well, what is theatre but a performance? Now, sometimes you add music, sometimes you add chanting, sometimes you add vocal, you know, words to, but all of it elicits a performance. That was 6,000 years ago, 7,000 years ago. Modern day, what are we doing? Performance to elicit a response, to make people think, to make people talk, to entertain. So we've added a feature, entertainment, and that was actually added back in ancient Greece, the Greek tragedies. But, you know, that just kind of reinforces your point that if you know the history, a lot of the principles from history are identical to today.
And it gives you a competitive advantage because most people won't have done the heavy lifting. The same applies in English literature, for example. There are certain well-known people, okay, that you study. The same goes in applies to economics. The same in science, where to some extent they teach you the history, okay, of some of the good and great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So why not do that and apply that methodology in normal walks of life and do the heavy lifting and learn where your particular interest came from.
You're listening to Salam Radio, and it's now time for Maghrib Azan. This Azan is sponsored by Park Foods. Come and see the difference.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa Allah. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر، الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم، وبارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم رب هذه الدعوة التامة والصلاة القائمة آت محمدا الوسيلة والفضيلة وابعثه مقاما محمودا الذي وعدته. اللهم آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. اللهم بك نحيا وبك نموت وإليك المصير. رضينا بالله ربا وبالإسلام دينا وبمحمد صلى الله عليه وسلم نبيا ورسولا.
And when you're learning the history of anything that you're interested
صوت
in,
من الغور أم نور من الغار أم ومضة الفكر.
starts again. That's happened twice now. Happened to you once, didn't it?
It did.
A while back, so it's testing. When you're studying the history and looking at the people and the facts, one thing that there's two benefits that I find, Kieran, and then you can share your input and then we'll get down to business. One is history repeats itself more often than
All
not.
the time.
Yeah. So if you're into spotting trends and cycles or being aware, you've got that. But the second thing which I find very useful is you can see the struggle people went through and how they overcame that struggle. And that should give you some solace, motivation, comfort in a way. Because when you go through hard time, you think, well, all of those good and great went through these times as well. So I'm doing something worthwhile, meaningful, and they got over it or addressed those issues. So can I.
Yeah.
And we're all different with how we may see that, but that's just my point of view, by the way.
Well, there's a really cool profession out there, and I think this is fantastic. They're called
Videography?
futurists.
Oh, yeah.
And their entire job is, and I mean, these people work at really high levels. They work at governmental levels. They work at, the mega corporation levels. And their entire job, is to predict what's going to happen next.
Yeah, I used to be on a speaking circuit with at least 3 people who were futurists. And some of the stuff that they share is awesome, really is. Wow.
Yeah, it really
But that's
is.
their thing.
Yeah, but they're fantastic historians.
That's right. Go figure.
The way they plan and predict is entirely based on what they learn from history.
There you go. So learn the history.
Yep. So let's get into the origins of money.
Well, the history of money really traces back to ancient times, really, Kieran. And it's evolved as humankind and civilization has evolved. And it started as one thing, and then it's moved on to something different. And I think today it's fair to say most people would see it as a means or medium of exchange. So you can buy things with it or invest it, which we like to do, but let's just keep it simple. But
actually, it's still principally the same thing as it was right at the beginning.
That's right. Yeah, which is to have
A
some kind
means
of
of
exchange.
barter.
Yeah, so to have a fair exchange in some way, both to both parties. If there's 2 people involved, you can sometimes have 3 or more people involved. But we'll keep it simple. But yeah, and understanding that journey kind of gives you, like we said earlier, gives you crucial insights on the fundamental concepts, and also helps you to understand money, the psychology of money, how money moves. By the way, which was an episode that we did a while back, which I think was really eye-opening for people who don't understand or want to understand more about money and how money moves and why money moves.
And how it transfers.
Yeah, and those were just some of the insights. So with that, Kieran, tell us about where it all started.
So, cast your mind back to when you were but a boy on a boat, floating down the river.
Was it dark and windy?
It was a windy,
Was it
dark
raining?
and stormy night. No, but if you go back far enough, pre-money, pre-money, humans generally congregated in little villages, small cities, and we used the barter system. I'll give you 2 oxen for 3 sheaves of wheat, or whatever it is, and that created certain imbalances in the economics of the day based on how good a negotiator you were. And it wasn't always fair. Some people who held more power could pay less for something that cost other people more.
Well, if you're the only person who's got wheat, then
so
it's a monopoly, isn't it?
Just
like today's world.
Just like today's world. So it created a bit of an imbalance back then. So we lived through the barter system as different little human settlements and colonies. And then we get to ancient Mesopotamia. Often referred to as the cradle of civilization. And they had some fantastically rich and fertile lands that spanned quite a distance. And that was where we kind of started to develop as a more complex societal structure.
And for anybody who wants to know where that area was?
North Africa.
Somewhere between the Tigris and
Euphrates? The Euphrates rivers.
Yeah, you see? I'm just making sure you've done your research.
Yeah. The Mesopotamians, sorry, double M there, they were one of the first civilizations to develop weights and measures so that everything had a recognized, coordinated,
agreed approach,
amount.
Basically.
Yeah. And I mean, they advanced for the day astronomy, mathematics, and that need to get precise weights and measures for trade.
Then you can quantify stuff.
Yeah.
And there's a level of fairness, and it's also efficient, then, isn't it?
And it made things more efficient.
Yeah.
And the first tradable tokens, if you will, were pieces of silver and barley oats, of all things. Because...
How we moved on.
Well, have we, though?
In a way.
Well, yes and no. But yeah.
People still trade silver and barley, by the way.
Both things are still traded today. So, their values have changed, but they haven't really changed what they are. And it goes back to what we were saying about historical principles are still the same. And then during that time period, that silver became a shekel. Now, a shekel isn't or wasn't historically a measure of wealth. It was your measure of weight. You'd have 1 shekel of barley, of wheat. Well, it's a weight value, but that weight value had intrinsic monetary value.
Of course it did, yeah.
So it became one and the same thing. So a shekel was your first kind of named currency, if you like. So that takes us out of Mesopotamia.
Yeah.
And then after Mesopotamia, and I mean around similar sorts of times, we also have ancient Egypt, who were doing, and it's no coincidence that a lot of these ancient civilizations were doing very similar things. They were assigning value and wealth to very, very similar things. So, and each of them added their own little bit to the structure of what became or what has become money. So,
like we do with things today.
Yeah. So this is kind of like a whirlwind bus stop tour of the ancient societies and how they added their piece to the pie before we get up to talking about money as it currently stands. So ancient Egypt, vastly wealthy, lots of gold, lots of silver, and I mean, you just look at some of the pharaohs, tombs.
Yeah, when you go to
the amount
Egypt
of
and
wealth
pyramids, yeah.
that was piled in those tombs with them is staggering. But they had the gold available to them. They mined it. Well, I say they mined it. Their people mined it. And they took the benefit of that. And so, and from that came, so the Mesopotamians gave us our standard value of weight.
Mm-hmm.
The Egyptians gave us our standardized system of value.
Yeah.
So this much silver was worth this much in this
Gold
this,
or whatever,
this.
Copper, so on and so forth, yeah.
So this was really the start of integrating precious metals to the trading networks around. But
So they made it more tradable, for want of a better expression.
yeah, made everything more tradable because there was that intrinsic weight
There's
that the
agreed
Mesopotamians
practice now,
had,
yeah.
and now there's an agreed value, and you're not having to cart, 20 oxen down the river to then trade for 50 piles of hay or what have you. It was a lot easier to carry a bag of coins. We still didn't have traditional coins as we understand them, but adding gold and silver to identify your wealth is what kind of led you down that path of, I've got 20 gold pieces, therefore I'm worth more than you are, and that created a degree of stability and prosperity, and also what's the word I'm looking for? Not intergenerational, inter different countries.
Yeah.
It made it easier for different countries to adopt and trade with each other. So cross-border trading. Yeah, I could trade with the people of France, and they knew that 10 silver pieces was worth 10 silver pieces, and it was true over there as it was true over here. So it made trade between nations a lot simpler and a lot easier and a lot faster, a lot easier to negotiate.
And then we move on to
So after we get
the Egyptians.
the Egyptians flow nicely into ancient Greece and ancient Rome. And what have the Romans ever done for us?
Nothing apart from the A1, I think.
Nothing apart from the A1.
That's it. You've got the
Okay.
A1.
But what about baths? Okay, so apart from the roads and the baths, what have the Romans ever? Anyway,
Drainage system.
I'll stop quoting Monty Python. So, ancient Greece, ancient Rome is where we really started to get coins. Actual,
Yeah, they advanced it, didn't they?
They
moved
took it
on.
that step further,
Yeah.
and they started.
They commercialized it more.
Yeah, and they made it easier to go through.
Yeah, and that's where I think that's where kind of the story starts for most people, because we're still using that means of exchange today, albeit in a different guise.
Yeah.
Okay, but got pound notes and coins, etc.
We'll get to
notes came
in a-
later, but you've
we'll
got
get to notes
coins.
in a minute.
You've got coins, yeah.
But now we've got coins
For that area,
for
yeah.
era. Yeah, the ancient lions, ancient Turkey. They established a precedence for coinage, and this was the
Ancient Turkey's Constantinople, isn't it?
It is. And we're talking. I mean, we're now all the way up to that really recent time of the 7th century BC. And if you're modern, that's the 7th century BCE. Do you know the difference?
You remember it well. Do you know the difference? One's got an E in it.
Well, no, sidetrack. So, BC is, we all use the Gregorian calendar.
Yeah.
That's a Christian calendar, and BC is before Christ. AD is Anno Domini
Yes.
after Christ. But under modern views, people don't like the religious contexts, so it's been rebranded as BCE and CE. Before Common Era. So that's the different little side note there. But anyway, they made standardized coins out of an ore called electrum. Now, electrum was the mixing of gold and silver. Made it so it still had intrinsic value. And then the Greeks added the drachma to the system, and the adoption of that coinage spread quickly. And that's when we start getting into franking money and putting people's faces on coins. And by putting faces on coins, you added value to the people, not just the coins.
Yeah.
So you had a double whammy there.
And
my face is on a coin, therefore I'm important enough to have a face on a coin. So I'm worth something. Interesting piece of marketing there. Yeah. And for more about marketing, previous show.
Another episode on that, yeah. We're going to go towards the
Stay tuned to Salam Radio after this short ad break.
رحلتي في عالم الظلمات والصمت الرهيب، رحلتي في موكب الأشباح تبدو وتغيب، رحلتي في عالم الظلمات والصمت الرهيب، رحلتي في موكب الأشباح تبدو وتغيب، في سرادي بالأساطير ودقات القلوب، في شرايين الدجى الداجي وصوت العندليب، في سرادي بالأساطير ودقات القلوب، في شرايين الدجى الداجي وصوت العندليب، في دماء الكون في الأنواء في السحر العجيب، وحدي غريبا بين آلاف الدروب، رحلتي وحدي غريبا بين آلاف الدروب، أرتدي الخوف أعب الدمع أجتر النحيب، مؤنسي رابي هو النبراس عندي والحبيب، أرتدي الخوف أعب الدمع أجتر النحيب، مؤنسي رابي هو النبراس عندي والحبيب، رحلتي موت موت، رحلتي موت موت، رحلتي موت موت، رحلتي موت، وبعض الموت أنس للغريب، رحلتي وحدي غريبا بين آلاف الدروب، رحلتي وحدي غريبا بين آلاف الدروب، ماض إلى أين لا أدري وبين هم إلى المسير وطول السير يضنيني، أين المفر وروح الدهر تطردني، أين المقر وروح الأرض تنفيني، ماض إلى أين لا أدري وبين هم إلى المسير وطول السير يضنيني، أين المفر وروح الدهر تطردني، أين المقر وروح الأرض تنفيني، السقم ينضبني والموت يلفظني، السقم ينضبني والموت يلفظني، والوجد يزرعني والوهم يجنيني، رحلتي وحدي غريبا بين آلاف الدروب، رحلتي في عالم
Find us on Facebook at Salam Radio.
Assalamu alaikum, good evening. You're listening to Salam Radio on 106.2 FM, and this is the Wealth Made Simple show with me, Shaz Nawaz, and
Kieran Bateman.
And Kieran, we were talking about money, but before we do that, as always, we would love to have interaction from our listeners. We know they're out there because they always tell us when we're walking out and about in different places, and listen to your show, and I find it quite interesting, which is obviously always nice. And
it's always nice to
feedback. Yeah. So feel free to participate. You can do so by calling in the studio 01733 602 133. You can text us on 07411 191 062, or use any of the live stream platforms which are Facebook, YouTube, X or Twitch for tonight. So feel free to share your thoughts. And this week on Wealth Made Simple, we're talking about the history of money, and you've talked us through a few different areas, and you just finished off talking about the Greek and the Romans.
Yep.
Where do we go next?
So, after Greece and Rome, ancient Greece and Rome, we wind ourselves back a little bit and travel a little further east, go to China. And China is important because at the same time of all of these other civilizations creating money and a term of a transfer of trade, China developed its own as well. And that just kind of goes to show you that intrinsically giving value to something so that you can trade it easily is necessary to make trade more productive.
Because it makes it easier, doesn't it?
Makes life easier, makes everything easier. And it didn't matter where in the world you lived.
And simplicity has its place, especially when you're looking at scaling, innovating, and leverage.
And a lot of this comes down to the expansion of humanity. The bigger we are, the more complex we become, the faster we need to find ways to... I need to give you something, you need to give me something, we need to have something that's
speed and
coherent.
efficiency.
Speed and efficiency.
Yeah.
It becomes necessary. And necessity is the mother of all invention.
It is. So Chinese gave us paper money?
Well, no. Chinese initially gave us the coinage, which square in the middle, circle on the outside. And that's very tightly linked to their spiritual philosophy of Taoism. The square is the earth, and the circle is the heavens. So, and this was referred to as the cash coin, and it was the first time cash was referenced in terms of the coin. And this, standardized and monopolized coinage, and they went to great lengths to make sure,
And then they stuck it on a piece of paper.
In the 9th century, and that's where we're coming to next, into the Middle Ages. And whilst the Chinese were initially dealing with paper money and the introduction of paper money in the 9th century. And this was groundbreaking because it meant it was a lot lighter, it was a lot easier. And the printing and security measures that they went to, although very primitive by today's standards, at the time they were state-of-the-art and very difficult to duplicate. And over the seas, more towards us, in Italy, in the Middle Ages, you started getting the banking houses in places like Florence and Venice. These family, I'm going to use the word cartels. Offices, as they were back then, owned and gained the monopoly on, bringing money in, exchanging it for value, giving it tender. And by that I mean they held it so that there was a value to it, and you could travel, and you had a writ that said, I've given your bank in Florence 10 gold coins. On production of this writ, you will give me my 10 gold coins back in a different place, but it means I don't have to travel with 10 gold coins.
Some people might know that as a check, for example.
And this is where checks started to come in, and then people could write.
Some people might not know what a check is, by the way,
Yeah.
depending on
and then
how old or young they are.
People started writing personal checks. I own this account with you, and I give the bearer of this check 5 gold pieces.
Banker's draft, yeah. So this is about the time when fiat money kind of came into existence.
That's when, it started to become more as we know it. And I'm avoiding using the word fiat money because fiat money isn't tied to gold.
That's right.
The way it was once. So cash monies, Chinese cash coin, cash monies, it's tied to gold. It's tied to the value of gold. And that was
It made a lot of sense, by the way.
Yeah, and that was the modern era of finance, where you had the gold standard and the Bretton Woods system.
I went to Bretton Woods school.
And this was 19th century. So
just to touch on that point, so the gold standard, governments moved away from that to some extent.
Yes.
And so now you're relying on their trust and credibility as opposed to what they've got in their back pocket.
Yes. But as you can see, that we go from ancient China, 9th century BC, the invention of paper money, and the banking houses in the early after the Roman Empire, etc., and nothing really changes for the next couple of hundred years. And when I say couple of hundred, I mean nothing changes until the 19th century.
Few hundred years.
Few hundred years? Well, I mean, how long ago was the Roman Empire? Yeah? Over 1,000 years. So nothing changed for almost 1,000 years. That's how efficient this process is when it's valued against something that has a value.
And the lesson here also, Kieran, from my point of view, is when you find something works, you just rinse and repeat.
Yeah.
Just do it. Unless somebody wants to come up with a different and better way, which we're going to talk about right at the end here, something which is more popular or has been more popular in the last 10, 15 years, which is looking to replace
but
money as we know it.
But fundamentally...
but if it works, just carry on.
This has
it worked, didn't it?
Yeah, and money has worked as... So
if anybody wants to learn about the
gold
Bretton Woods
standard
system, they can obviously research that, and obviously the gold standard, which you don't have it in the UK nowadays. But
but fundamentally, I'll give you a short version, the truncated version. Gold has a value. The value of that money, the value of that gold is equal to this much money. This much money is what is valued against the gold, and the economy is based on the country has this much money and this much gold, and that's it.
Unless you get more gold, then you can print more money. But and then because obviously, and again, we talked about this when we did the episode on money and how money moves.
Yeah.
Any pound note, okay, and other currencies too, says I promise to pay the bearer upon demand.
Upon demand.
But what are they going to pay you if there's no gold? Take a £10 note and they'll give you another £10 note. Well, you're not paying me anything. You're just exchanging this a similar, the same note, just with a different number on it and printed at a different time. So that promise is, again, based on trust and credibility, depending on how stable a government is.
And this is where we transfer into fiat money. Fiat money is based on, not on gold like it used to be. It's based on the trust you have in the institution that printed it.
And then they start printing money because they need more money, and then something called inflation comes in their way.
And this is where inflation and devaluation and delineation starts happening. And
then to control inflation, they might increase interest rates. Does all this sound very familiar, Kieran? It was happening in the last 2 years.
Yeah, and this is what we have in today's day and age. Primarily, is the fiat system.
So we cause the problems, then we try and fix the problems.
And the problem is caused because we've decentralized the value of money against gold, and that's fundamentally what the issue is. We no longer have enough gold to subsidize the amount of cash in flow And therefore, we've got to trust the government that what they say that is worth it. It's a value of trust. That's what fiat is.
And when things are all good, it's all good. When things are not so good,
It's not so good.
you have a problem.
And you know, and so and this is also how countries get into debt, because you know something that you hear a lot is, oh, the UK is however many billions or trillions in debt.
Yeah.
In debt to who? Well, in debt to the central banking system, because you made your gold you made your money fiat rather than gold
Then
standard.
borrow money, yeah.
So you could borrow money. So you could generate more money. But by generating more money, you devalue the money that you have, so it's not worth as much. So when you go to the global scale, the economics are slightly different. But internally, that's where we're at. And that brings us all up to date to electronic transfers, digital money, online banking, and cryptocurrencies.
Blockchain, crypto, yeah.
Blockchain cryptocurrencies, which
I won't talk much about that.
we
'cause
won't talk much about.
There's plenty of information available out there, and some interesting.
And it's
stuff
worth looking into, and I would
on
advise
crypto.
anyone who's interested to do their
And I think
research.
There'll be some interesting stuff happening with crypto in the next 5 years, for sure.
Yes.
Uh,
Well, I
which
think
is in my area, as you know.
I think because if again, side note, if you're inclined to do so, research not Bitcoin per se, but blockchain technologies,
Yeah.
Hexgraph, Ethereum, what they are built on and why they're so secure
And again,
why they work.
learn it, know it.
And learn it, because these are decentralized, and I promise you regulation is coming.
And how many people, on that note, actually invest in things that they neither understand nor know the history of?
Well, I mean,
And that would be madness to some people, wouldn't it? Oh,
Yeah.
how can you do that? But
there's a whole economy on on trading pairs of pound versus yen, pound versus dollar, dollar versus franc,
yeah,
euro. Sorry,
Euro, yeah.
showing my age there. Yeah, and so there's a whole economy on base pairs of currencies being traded based on their intrinsic value at the time. If one goes up and another
and
goes
other
down.
items as well, precious metals, so on and so forth. Yeah.
Yeah. But if you don't understand why the currencies have the value they do, you can't look at a country's economic point and accurately go, well, based on what I know about what money is and how money is created, why it was created, where it comes from, I can look at a country, I can go to a country, and when I say go to a country, I mean look at the country from an economical standpoint, and I can judge fairly accurately whether I think the pound will be stronger within time than their currency. And that's not investment advice, because I'm not telling you which currency I'm picking or why or where. But as a starting point, it's a fantastic place to start. And this is how traders do it. They understand the history, they understand the economics.
Oh, all the time, and the information, which is power. But I think some of the interesting points about which we haven't delved into today because it's outside this particular scope. And if you want to learn about the economy and money, is to do with inflation,
Yeah.
interest rates, regulation, centralizing, decentralizing.
Yeah, decentralization is fascinating.
Okay, and looking at that, I think will serve people well
Yeah.
if they're interested in learning more about this. So that's I think was useful for
That's a brief history of
a
money.
brief, because I mean there's a lot you can
Yeah,
cover. You can
yeah,
be here for
there is.
3 hours and still not cover the
tenth of it,
intricacies
yeah.
of money. But that gives people some pointers in terms of if they're looking to learn more about this stuff, what they can look at. So money as we have it today
Is going to change.
is going to change, but it is, but as it is for now, linking this to wealth made simple, because that's what we're about. What can people do with that money?
Well, I mean,
Not investment advice, but just generally, because that's going to be another topic.
it is. But I mean, this is kind of where we come full circle, isn't it? Is that if you understand what money is, then you can start looking at it slightly differently. So, money isn't wealth.
So, yeah.
Money is a tool. It's a tool of wealth.
Yeah.
But as soon as you can completely understand that money is a tool, okay, well, yes, but Kieran, I go to work every month. I get a salary. I get PAYE, and there's more month left at the end of the money. You know, if it's a tool, then I should be well, sharpen your tools, maintain your tools. You know, you don't. If you never put petrol in your car, or electricity or diesel, whatever sort of car you've got, if you never put fuel in the car never goes anywhere. And you know, the car isn't a valuable monetary thing. It's a tool to get you from point A to point B in a more
Use it as a
efficient
tool.
manner.
But the means of exchange has at least two connotations that I want to share. One is going to a place and buying things, or paying your bills. The second one, which I think is more important, especially for this show, is I want to exchange this £100 for £110.
Yes.
But obviously, that exchange isn't going to happen overnight, by the way, depending on what you're buying, selling, transacting. But I think that's where people should put their effort and thinking cap on and say, I'm going to exchange this for something bigger so that then can serve my purpose in terms of my expenditure and give me more capital to invest, and then so on and so forth, whether you're looking to create intergenerational wealth or legacy or whatever. But again, that's going off on
in my mind, there are two ways of doing that. The first is you find something and you can look throughout history and look through modern history, things that go up in value. You know, if you bought, for example, a house in the 1970s for, you know, 5 grand, 50 grand, 100 grand, that the value of that house has gone up. So that £100 has been exchanged for the £110 that you were talking about. That's the first thing. So, and buying an asset that historically has proven to grow in value over time. One of which is my favorite is property. You know, buy land. They're not making any more of it. There's a finite resource there. So the more you can own.
Precious metals.
You know, things like, you know, often undervalued. Silver.
Yeah, it was
Often
really well.
forgotten. Everyone jumps on the gold bandwagon, but silver, bronze, things that, yeah.
And it costs you, or you need to invest less to get into it as well.
Invest less to get into it. Things that are
Diamond and rubies, or just, for example, if you
absolutely.
Watches, if you get the right ones.
Get the right watches.
And we're going to talk more about that on a different episode.
Yep. History will tell you what the right ones are, though. But also start looking at things that are important to modern society. So, you know, lithium, very important in batteries. Silicon, very important. All these things that are important in modern society, you can look at and you can make an educated judgment guess. Now, none of this is investment advice.
No, it's not. We're just saying, we're raising people's awareness here.
Throwing things out there. But those are things that over time appreciate in value. The other thing is to buy something that you can resell.
Yeah.
And
but a margin.
But something that you can resell indefinitely.
Yeah.
So, for example, your knowledge, people pay you for your knowledge. Now, when you give someone that knowledge, they've paid you for that. You still have that knowledge, you haven't given it away. somebody else can come and pay you for that same knowledge. So it's that intrinsically is a business, and that's fundamentally what the business provides is knowledge, experience, expertise, product. And that's the final one is product. Whether that product is I buy a property, I rent it to you, the property is my product.
Yep.
I'm giving you the product of a home. And I'm selling to you that to you at a price because, we both benefit there. You get a home, I get cash flow.
And different people have different views on this, by the way.
Yeah. I'm not
property ownership, but we're just here to talk about investment.
I'm just throwing the ideas out there. I'm not making judgment on anything. I buy a pencil maker that churns out 100 pencils an hour. I then sell the shop a pack of 100 pencils. I can use that machine, but I've had to invest in that machine to begin with to make the pencils to then sell it to the shop.
An ongoing investment as well.
An ongoing investment. But these are investments because they give me something back.
A return on investment.
A return
ROI.
on my investment. And that's what people need to look at. And that's why I say money is a tool. Because I use this tool to get hold of that tool. I exchange this tool for that tool.
It's just like anything else, isn't it? Some people say, for example, social media is good. Some say it's bad. It's neither good nor bad depending on how you use it.
It just depends on how
Same
you
with
use
money,
it.
but if you're, money is the root to all evil or the love of money. Okay, it just depends how you see it. Okay, I'm just saying. But you can. Nothing's, like I said, neither good nor bad. It depends how you're going to use it.
It does, but based on everything we've learned historically, money as the root of all evil, the love of money is the root of all evil. Money doesn't exist. Money doesn't exist.
It's an inferred value.
It's a product developed to expedite the barter system. And given that the Mesopotamians and the Egyptians gave us intrinsic weights and intrinsic values, we know that pen has a value of X. Okay, well, if I work for the value of X to earn, you promise to pay me, well, I exchange my time for your promise of wealth, your promise of an exchange. That exchange, I then exchange that for that pen. And so all money is, if it's anything at all, is an expedient way to exchange one thing for another.
We've gone full circle on me here on this,
And that money is the intermediary tool.
And it depends what you want to exchange it for.
Yeah, but it's the intermediary tool. Yeah. It doesn't actually exist.
And we're obviously here to advocate that the exchange should be some kind of a return for you,
yes.
Okay, which benefits you, okay, and your family and your loved ones, and whoever else you want to include in that circle, and that's where it really gets interesting. But some people just don't want to do that.
But the people who understand this best are the wealthiest people in the world.
That's right. And also, there's some people fear money. It's a phobia. You know what it's called?
No.
Crematophobia. Crematophobia.
I would have thought that was the fear of crematoriums.
That might be something else, maybe then.
Or the fear of fire.
That might be.
Just from the vernacular of the word.
Yeah. The crematophobia is the fear of money. So I think somebody doesn't have that fear. What they ought to do is, and I think it's about designing your life, just to kind of wrap up on this, because that's important for us. Designing your life as in how you want it to pan out for yourself based on the choices you make. As in, do I today want that thing, or am I willing to wait and invest this and let the investment then pay up to some extent, and then pay for that thing, and I've still got the capital there, and the capital will keep growing, and then I'll get that thing and another thing and another thing. And that's called, in my book anyway, discipline, patience and perseverance. But people don't want to wait for that thing in today's society.
I want it
because
now.
They want it now.
Yeah. Patience is important.
And they pay more for now, don't they?
Always.
Which, in my days, Okay, was if you wanted it now, you had to pay extra. If you know what I mean. Do you remember?
Yeah.
Huh?
And this is kind of where we, like you say, come full circle. If you view money as a tool, the way we've been discussing, and like you say, you buy an investment to pay for that thing rather than just pay for that thing, then that's great. If you view money as a tool, it makes negotiating with your boss about a pay rise a lot easier. Because now you're negotiating for a better tool. You're not negotiating for more money.
Don't try that anytime soon, Kieran. But, well, this has been an interesting topic. We've talked about the history very, very quickly, and then seeing money as a tool, as a mechanism, and a means of exchange, and then do you want to spend it on something, or do you want to invest it and get a return? That hopefully will give people some insights. And with that, this show today is done. We'll see you, Kieran, and you'll see me and everybody else, same place, same time next week. Assalamu alaikum.
Stay tuned to Salam Radio after this short ad break.
Masterminds